Watch how the third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. Asia Wilson creams Lexie Hull like she did 5 times in game 1. Peggy Hammock get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. Asia Wilson doesn't like Lexie Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexie Hull gets...
The Indiana Fever watched Game 2 slip away not because they were outmatched, but because the referees practically handed it to the Las Vegas Aces. There were 41 fouls, 16 in just one quarter, with players being thrown to the ground, and somehow Aya Wilson was celebrated for her stat line, while Lexie Hull pushed through a back injury she suffered in Game 1. This wasn't basketball, it was chaos disguised as defense, and yet the Fever still managed to battle through it all. The real question now is what this means heading back to Indiana, where fans can show their support by commenting. Let's go, Lexie. Let's go.
I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up, so that's all you can really...
How did Indiana walk into Las Vegas, face the 2-time defending champs, deal with whistles already leaning the wrong way, and still walk out with a double-digit win? Game 1 wasn't just a victory, it was a statement that shook the league. The Fever entered that opener with a calm discipline you rarely see in such a young team, and Kelsey Mitchell immediately erased any doubts by exploding for a playoff career-high 34 points. Every time Las Vegas tried to press, Indiana answered with composure, not with flash, but with control, refusing to let the tempo slip out of their hands.
Take that. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's one. That's one. That's one. Yeah. Fever. They ain't song and dance to me, man. I'm just ready, man. I love basketball. I love playing with my team. So.
And then came the Aces' supposed trump card, Aya Wilson, the reigning MVP, who found herself trapped in a nightmare shooting night. Just 6 makes on 22 attempts. Indiana's defense smothered her, contesting every shot near the rim and forcing her to work for every single bucket. That was the real story. One team executing with surgical precision while staying disciplined, and the powerhouse squad unable to find any rhythm on their own floor.
Asia Wilson, look at that foul they called for. Yeah, saved her. That's some bullcrap. I love Aaliyah Boston. Great job today playing defense. Look at that. Another foul. Bailed out by the refs. I get pissed off. This is the worst one. They call this a jump ball. How is that a jump ball? Nobody even had possession. Aaliyah Boston, that's anything is over the back. Not a jump ball.
What made it sting even more for Las Vegas was the context. Playing at home with the whistle bending their way and national coverage already predicting an easy series win. Instead, the Fever stood firm and walked out with a 16-point blowout. Fans immediately noticed the cracks, with the foul count feeling suspicious even in victory, but the sheer magnitude of Indiana's win buried most complaints. Still, that undercurrent of bias wasn't overlooked. It was simply brushed aside because the Fever took care of business anyway.
And Asia Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish.
That embarrassment lit a fire under the Aces, because a 16-point loss wasn't something they could excuse, and it's why they stormed into Game 2 determined to flip the narrative. The question was never if Vegas would respond, but how far they were willing to go, and at what cost. Was Game 2 really basketball, or just a brawl disguised as playoff intensity by the referees? From the opening minutes, it was obvious the Aces had no intention of playing clean.
The WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know Asia Wilson only receives.
They opened the game throwing arms and crashing bodies on every possession, while the officials failed to establish any control. What should have been a back-and-forth showcase between two great teams instead spiraled into 41 fouls, the whistle echoing non-stop through the arena. 16 of those calls came in the third quarter alone, a stretch where Indiana had no chance to find rhythm. Every spark of momentum was chopped into pieces by constant stoppages that seemed to consistently tilt in one direction. And then Steph.
So why don't you think you were able to find any flow? And when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm. It's about timing. It's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us.
The physicality wasn't occasional. It became the entire storyline. Players were shoved cutting through the lane. Defenders relied on forearms instead of footwork, and more than once someone ended up flat on the floor. What stood out wasn't just the sheer number of fouls, but how they disrupted the Fever's rhythm. This is a team that thrives in flow, running and sharing the ball, yet instead they were dragged into a wrestling match they never asked for. While Vegas piled up free throws, Indiana was forced into choppy half-court sets, the least comfortable part of their identity.
Yeah, Lexie, obviously you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play?
I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is it's the end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. A lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, get me ready for...
Lexie Hull should never have even been on the court. After injuring her back in Game 1, she was a game-time decision, and most players would have sat out, healed, and waited for the series to shift home. Instead, she taped herself up, took the floor, and was immediately targeted by Vegas's rough style. You could see it in real time, contact after contact, bump after bump, with her crashing to the hardwood more than once. Yet in the middle of all that, Hull stepped to the arc and drilled 5 three-pointers, tying a Fever playoff record. It wasn't clean or pretty, but it was pure defiance. After the game, she admitted, "I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. We're just pushing through." That's not a highlight reel soundbite. It's the voice of a player who knows she's being punished, but refuses to fold.
This is what happened. They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call foul. It was a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called, people flying.
Meanwhile, the national conversation barely mentioned Hull's grit or the Fever's fight to keep their season alive. It was all about Aya Wilson's stat line. 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Those were the numbers repeated everywhere. What got overlooked was how she piled them up, bullying her way into the paint, knocking players around, and benefiting from calls that Indiana never seemed to get on the other end. Fans watching called it out, but the headlines still framed her night as dominant. Dominant isn't the same as fair when half the opposing starters are limping off the floor.
I mean, it's how you look at it. It looks, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you manipulate it to different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I mean, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so...
Aaliyah Boston lived that reality on nearly every possession. She finished with 10 points and 13 rebounds, but it seemed like each one came with a shot to the ribs or a shove to the back. Paint touches that should have meant free throws instead turned into no calls. What people forget is that Boston is only in her 3rd season, yet she already carries herself like a veteran. Against the Aces, she wasn't given an inch, and instead of complaining, she battled for every rebound. Her box score looked steady, but in truth, those numbers came from survival basketball.
Kept her out of that space as much as she would have wanted to. She did end up with 19 points. 7-0. Ace's run has been stopped. Sims.
And while the spotlight stayed fixed on the star names, it was Odyssey Sims who gave Indiana room to breathe. She poured in 18 points while constantly fighting through double teams, absorbing hacks on her arms, and dealing with whistles that shattered any flow she managed to create. Time and again, Sims turned broken possessions into baskets, only to watch the next trip wiped away by another stoppage. The frustration was visible, but she never slowed down. Every push Vegas delivered, Sims answered with buckets.
First foul on Young. Sims over. Asia Wilson, she had to put some extra arc on.
The story of Game 2 wasn't that Indiana failed. It was that they weren't allowed to play their game. The grit was still there in Hull's threes, Boston's boards, and Sims' drives, but every surge was stomped out by a whistle or a shove. The Aces didn't expose weaknesses in strategy. They leaned on foul-heavy chaos and rode it to a win. So, if you're asking how the Fever lost, the answer isn't about who played better. Without the constant interruptions, Indiana's poise and shooting could have swung things their way. The real question is how Las Vegas, with both the whistles and brute force on their side, managed to change their tactics enough to shut Kelsey Mitchell down. In Game 1, she torched the Aces for 34 points, scoring off the catch, off the dribble, and at the rim. But in Game 2, she was smothered, dropping to just 13, not because she forgot how to score, but because Las Vegas made it their mission to squeeze her until there was no space left to operate.
Step on that note with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to contain her a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball. I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around
threw extra bodies at her, sometimes face guarding even when she didn't have the ball. Every cut turned into contact. Every screen set for her was met with a hard hedge. That completely shifted the Fever's flow. Instead of Mitchell dictating pace and stretching the defense, Las Vegas forced the ball into other hands. Double teams funneled her passes into traffic, and by the time she found daylight for a clean look, the shot clock was already winding down. It was a smart, disciplined adjustment, one that looks far cleaner on film than it ever felt in the game.
Physicality's out of control, that's for sure. I mean, you can bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for the whole half court. You put two hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying that we're not fouling too. I'm not saying that.
Ironically, even Becky Hammon complained afterward about the physical nature of the game. Think about that. The Aces had just benefited all night from whistles that stopped and started play in their favor, yet their own coach wasn't happy with how rough it got. That detail matters because it shows the result wasn't driven solely by tactics, but shaped heavily by chaotic officiating. Yes, their pressure on Kelsey Mitchell worked, but the constant interruptions made it impossible to fairly measure how effective those adjustments really were. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston kept battling, 10 points and 13 rebounds on another night where she looked more like a linebacker crashing bodies than a center working from the post. Still, Las Vegas added a clever wrinkle by stretching the floor, pulling her out of position and creating mismatches that let Aya Wilson and Jackie Young attack, without a true counter waiting on the help side.
Now the starting point guard, and here's Hull, an early test. Great sign because her shooting has been off. Yeah, Mitchell. Short. Hull with another offensive rebound, turn, shoots, scores. 2 of their last 3. Hull again, yes. Oh, you found.
And then there was Lexie Hull. The Aces may have managed to erase Mitchell for one night, but they couldn't stop her. Coming off a back injury from Game 1, she was a game-time decision, barely cleared to play. Yet not only did she suit up, she buried 5 three-pointers, tying the Fever's playoff record. That wasn't luck, it was pure mental toughness. The clearest proof that Indiana refuses to quit even when undermanned.
Fever runs still. Lexie Hull has scored the last 6 points for Indiana with a couple of threes. Mitchell, good look. And she got it. Kelsey Mitchell in that first half had 9 points, but was just 1 of 5 from three-point range. It was Lexie Hull doing the damage from three, and now she's doing a Kelsey Mitchell imitation of the night. Sims gets the roll.
So yes, Las Vegas made their adjustments, executed a plan, leaned on the whistle, and walked away with the win. But now the board flips. The next game won't be in Vegas. It'll be in Indianapolis, where the Aces won't just see Mitchell, Boston, and Hull. They'll face 17,000 fans ready to be louder than any whistle. What happens when a team that's been roughed up, whistled out of rhythm, and nearly injured on the road finally gets to step back into their own building? That's the test awaiting the Indiana Fever as the series shifts to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. After 2 bruising battles in Las Vegas, where energy in the arena and questionable officiating tilted things toward the Aces, the dynamic changes. Now the Fever return to a place that feels like theirs, where every bucket from Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Mitchell will be amplified by thousands of voices instead of drowned out.
I just asked you to look forward to the series going to your home court in Indianapolis. How much is that really going to make a difference in this series, and how much does it mean to you guys to have that home court advantage?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. Our fans, they show up and they show out, and so for us, just using that our own energy, but also using the energy in the crowd, I think it's gonna be really great.
Gainbridge has already shown it's more than just a home court. It's a weapon. All season, opposing teams have stumbled in the second half as the noise kept rising, and the same momentum swings that vanished in Vegas come alive in Indy. There are no quiet stretches at Gainbridge. The crowd stays loud through runs, fouls, and even missed calls. Vegas may have used their home energy to fuel a Game 2 win, but now it's Indiana's turn. Even Becky Hammon admitted, "Our experience there has not been great this season," which says plenty coming from a championship coach. That matters, because officiating bias can't hide in silence when 17,000 fans are reacting in real time. Officials won't miss the contact on Boston's post-ups when the roar explodes at every bump, and they won't overlook the body checks on Hull when the crowd demands accountability. That's the underrated edge of home court. You don't just get the rims and the familiarity, you get constant pressure on every decision from the people watching closest.
We're excited. I know the last time it was the first playoff game in a really long time, so to be able to have 2 more for our fans that have been there with us all season, I'm really excited for that, and we definitely do feed off of their energy, so we're really looking forward.
For the Fever, that's fuel. Lexie Hull toughed out back pain in Vegas, drilling 5 threes despite getting hacked and knocked around. Aaliyah Boston pulled down rebound after rebound while taking more punishment than the whistles ever reflected. Kelsey Mitchell was bottled up after her Game 1 explosion, but you can sense that frustration is about to sharpen into fire at home. This is where battle scars stop holding players back and start turning into energy. We've seen it already. Earlier this year, the Fever erased double-digit deficits at Gainbridge once the atmosphere became suffocating for opponents. That same shift is why these next 2 games aren't just playoff stops. They're the moment Indiana turns pain into power and forces the Aces into a building where every mistake feels bigger and every Fever run feels unstoppable. Las Vegas may have leaned on whistles and bruises to steal Game 2, but Indiana's spirit never cracked, and what happened in Vegas won't carry the same weight in Indianapolis. Home court is now the Fever's weapon, loud, fearless, and impossible to ignore. Both Boston and Hull admitted after the loss that they couldn't wait to get back in front of their fans, with Hull saying, "Our fans, they show up and they show out." If Indiana dismantled Vegas once on the road and still fought through chaos in Game 2, imagine what comes next with Gainbridge packed and ready. Show your support for the Fever by commenting. Let's go Lexie. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a moment. Click the video on screen, and we'll see you in the next one.v.